Most organizations would like to say that their approach to revenue growth is in large part due to human-centric sales strategies. The need for doing so, in my opinion, is more pressing if you consider even a few statistics like these. 66% of customers expect companies to understand their needs. Customer frustration can lead to churn, with 72% of customers likely to share a positive experience, but only 13% willing to share a negative one with 15 or more people. Common customer complaints include navigation, site search, and load times. Customers seek personalized experiences but are cautious about sharing personal information, with only 66% willing to share data if they perceive value in return. And providing cohesive omnichannel experiences is crucial, as 76% of businesses are increasing investments in offering multiple channels for customer service. Now, to uncover how we can best navigate these issues, we'll be chatting with the author of books like Set Up to Win, Three Frameworks to a High Performing Sales Organization, Sales and Marketing Alignment, and Iceberg Selling, Becoming a Better Salesperson by Looking Below the Surface. But first, hello, and welcome to the Predictable B2B Success podcast. I'm Vinay Koshy, and our guest is Karl Becker. Now, Karl, you have founded and run numerous companies over the last 30 years, and now run Improving Sales Performance, which is a consultancy that supports sales organizations to build high-performing teams and achieve their revenue goals. You are also the author of books that I mentioned before, but I'm curious, was there a particular event or incident that really brought home to you this idea that there are some foundational elements to sales and marketing that probably get looked over or glossed over in many organizations?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. Thank you. I think there's so many lessons learned I've had, and I could share them all, and I'm always willing to share them. But the one that stands out with what you're talking about is I'll even go back further a little bit in my history. So I had a digital marketing agency. We had about 30 employees. This was around 2000, 2010. And we did work that was internationally recognized. We made their first iPhone application for the Porsche brand here in the States when it was on an iPhone 3. So that kind of gives you some context. But I was that entrepreneur that thought, if only they could clone me, if I could only just find another Carl, I could just keep selling and selling and selling. And I think what that told me as a business owner, and now many years later, someone looking back that's a consultant, is I didn't have those foundations. I wasn't clear on my value. The reason I was able to sell is we had a great portfolio. We did great work, but I was nimble. I could go and kind of change and read the room and really problem solve. And a lot of those things actually fast forward became the ideas of iceberg selling. Like, how do you understand what's really below the surface? But at the time, I think I was just naturally good at getting into conversation, understanding people. And I was always, every sale was a custom experience. We know this, that if everything you do is custom, you're eventually going to run out of bandwidth. So that kind of starts to give you the compass of how do you solve that? And for me, I had to learn the hard way in running other companies and then eventually becoming a consultant that many companies, including my own at the time, we weren't clear on our value. We weren't clear on our ideal customer, how we were different in the world. What was our promise to our customers? What was the journey we took somebody from the time they showed a little bit of interest to the time we gave them a proposal, then closed that and moved it forward? I think the biggest lesson I have is oftentimes even a successful company doesn't have a sales process, doesn't have defined foundations. And that might be what's holding you or your team back, is this lack of clarity.
I'd love to dive into that in a little bit, but I'm also curious, given your journey to date, what would you say would be your personal area of strength?
Yeah. Wow, these are great questions. I'll tell you a story. I started to write my first book, Set Up to Win. And when I started to write it, I have a writing partner. I was writing it with them. And I really thought it was all going to be about process. These are the right questions to ask. This is how you're going to learn. These are the things that you need to know. And as I started to work with my writing partner, they said, Karl, you're all about change. You're all about the human experience. You're all about up-leveling organizations, up-leveling leaders, up-leveling salespeople. That's your jam. That's what you love. You love connecting with people and helping them be better. That was an accident. I didn't know that was this accidental gift that I had. But I would say personally, the thing that fills me up the most, that I love doing, and I think is like my superpower that I'm really good at, is working with teams and individuals to help them see the value that they have and how they can up level themselves and start to collaborate, and really through collaboration and teaming be a team that wins a championship, that be a team that starts to win instead of just relying on one or two people, kind of like at the beginning. At the beginning, I told you the story about if I could just clone me. And if I could go back in time, I would 100% of the time say, I wish I could just build the team that knew how to team and collaborate and work together and had a shared vision. So that's my strength. And I love that I found it. I wish I would have found it
Mhm.
earlier, but that's how I would answer your
And in that area of strength, what would you say is something that businesses don't know but should?
The one that came up to mind when you said that there were two that just crossed the finish line at the
Mhm.
same time. The first one is all leads are not created equal. We run around as leaders of companies, sometimes even sales leaders of companies, marketing leaders of companies, CEOs of companies. We just wish we had more leads. All leads aren't created equal. So this is where sales and marketing typically get into conflict. Marketing's like, I'm delivering you these leads. Sales is like, they're not good enough. And marketing says, well, if you would just spend time getting to know them a little bit better, they'd be good leads. And around we go. So I think the first thing that I would tell many business owners, people in sales, people in marketing, is that there is a myth out there that you just need more leads. And a lot of times you might have that gold already in your sales funnel. You might already have another 500,000, 2 million, 10 million in your funnel of people you've talked to before, customers you can start to help solve other problems for. That's probably the first one. The second one, I think I would say that is the same DNA. All salespeople aren't created
Mhm.
equal, and just because someone's really good at sales doesn't mean they can go out and open doors. They might hate business development. They might be a super introvert, which makes them an amazing listener when marketing delivers them a lead that wants to talk, and they ask questions and they build these beautiful relationships and they manage this book of business. But if you put them in a room to network, or if you ask them to start to do outbound, they would melt. And vice versa. You might have some very charming extrovert people that love being out there. But if you gave them an account to manage, they're seeing squirrels all the time and they're off to the next thing because
Mhm.
their juice is connecting with people. So I think with both of those, the common theme is everything is not equal. Like all leads are not the same, all salespeople aren't the same. And if we start to unpack that, we typically find then we can put the right people in the right place and we can start to meet the buyers or the leads where they are in their
Mhm.
own journey. So it's this back to change and understanding people, whether it's a customer or the individual customer, like your salesperson, and then empowering them to move forward. In this case, down the funnel toward hopefully a
Certainly.
sale.
A lot to unpack there. I'm just going to backtrack a little bit because I remember in our earlier conversation we were talking, or you were talking about this misconception of around a shortcut to revenue. Now, I'd love for you to elaborate on that and tell us why you emphasize, going back to what you were saying originally, the importance of foundational work in achieving sustainable growth.
If you just think about something you might have bought in the recent past, a new car, maybe you're a new parent, a stroller for your newborn child, a new house, maybe you're picking out colleges for your kid. You didn't just fill out the form or push the buy button. And there was no magical thing that somebody said that got you across that finish line that made you a customer. There was a lot of little tiny steps. One of the stories I tell, it's tied to these baseballs in back of me, is I went to a baseball game with my youngest son when he was about 8 years old. He was actually my oldest son, I'm sorry. At 8 years old, we went into this game and he was convinced we were going to catch a ball. And sure enough, we brought our mitts and he looked at me. He goes, when are we going to catch a ball? And I said, right now. And this ball came to me and I caught it. And I have a ball from the game. It's one of the ones in back of me. So I have two boys. And so I'm making the story short. But I was like, how would I ever replicate this again? Catching a ball is like a once in a lifetime experience, right? If you follow baseball, like that's not going to happen all the time. But yet I have this other son and I wanted to get him a ball. So I started to reverse program that. And I thought about, okay, there's a certain place you want to sit. And I better have my home team's jerseys on. And maybe I bring a kid because baseball players like kids. And what I was doing is I was increasing my odds of catching a ball. And it doesn't mean I would catch it every time, but if over time the frequency would be higher than, say, the random
Mm.
person sitting someplace where they never catch a ball. And as I started to think about this, I realized, whoa. And spoiler alert, we have 5 balls. I got my son a second ball. And in Dallas, Texas, I was at a conference and brought him and we walked away with a ball. But the point of it is, it's a lot of little things around intentionality and increasing your chance of winning again and again and again, so that when you go to that baseball game, when you get on that sales call, your odds of winning are higher than, say, that next person in the stands or your competitor, because you thought through all these things. And so to go back to the foundations, I think oftentimes I'll go into an organization and I'll say, what's your sales process? And they look at me blind, like kind of stare, like, what's going on? I was like, let's say a lead came in the website. How quickly do you respond to them? We try to get to them in 24 to 40 hours. You try or you do, and could you do it within 4? Could you do it within 2? And then what do? Do you put it in the CRM? Who talks to them? Who do you give it to? And you start to take the idea of a journey in your own business from the time somebody's interested in what you have to the time they buy, and maybe even to the time you deliver that product, and then the relationship afterwards. And if you don't have that high level documented, if you can't tell me who's going to touch it and what they're going to give them, then you don't have a sales process. So of course you're going to have sporadic sales, because now we're up to the individual and chance. And I'd like to increase my odds with chance, right? I want to be the chance favors the prepared guy, not the lucky guy. So just to give you a high level, so much of, I think, salespeople and sales leaders and even people that run companies, they don't always think about all the extra steps and the discipline and intentionality. But when the light bulb goes off, they go, oh God, yeah, that would help. But I think a lot of times we've grown so fast that we've forgotten to systematize and even use technology to support that.
I mean, you make a brilliant point, but I'm curious, how do you identify organizations that are actually ready to embrace change and put in the hard work necessary for growth?
That is like one of these special questions from my heart. So I have this kind of filter sometimes with people want to work with me specifically. And I hope it doesn't come across arrogant or cocky, because that's not what I'm trying to communicate. But I actually ask people 3 questions. Do you want to change? And then my sub question is, will you do the hard work? If you're just looking for a miracle, then I'm probably not the right fit. And my experience with people looking for miracles is you're going to get let down. You're going to have to do the hard work. It's like getting in shape. You don't just take a pill and go to and get a gym membership. You got to put in the hard work if you really want to be in shape. So my first one is, do you want to change? And then my second one, do I like you? Do you seem like somebody that wants to change and go on this journey? Are you open to being vulnerable? Are you open to realizing that you and your team might really need some help? Are you open to having these conversations in a healthy way? I don't throw anyone under the bus. And then the last one is, do you like me? Because I have a certain style. And so when I'm looking at people that I work with, that's how I read the room. But to answer your question about change, there's some really big clues. There's I'm at rock bottom. I'm tired of being frustrated. I've hired 3 sales managers in 2 years and it never works out. And I have this revolving door of salespeople and I'm at wit's end. I don't know how to fix it. At that point, change is almost survival. You realize you're out of options. Unfortunately, that's a tough one, but it still gets you to a place where you're like, I need to do something new. I'm open to hearing ideas. The other one is, what I love is usually you find a leader that already cares tremendously. They say things like, I deal a lot in the small and mid-sized businesses, so 5 to say 50 million in revenue. That's a lot of the customers I work with. And so same with the team. But they'll say, we're like family. I want what's best for them. We're in it together. Like they talk as if they're already a team. And that owner really, truly cares about those people. And they've already invested in training, or they've sent them back to school, or their actions show that they're open to change. And those are usually like the most fertile ground, because that a lot of times that company just, they haven't had a guide. They haven't had a roadmap or a blueprint to change, but their heart's in the right place and their mind's in the right place. Those are probably the 2 biggest ones. The third one's probably just somebody read something, they heard a podcast, and like, you know what, I'm open to hearing a new idea. I don't know if I'm in or not, but I'm at least curious. So there's a level of curiosity too.
Could you expand on that by sharing examples of mindset shifts you've observed within organizations and how it's impacted their success?
I got brought in to become a fractional director of sales at a SaaS company. And there was about 50 employees. The sales team, I think, was 3 or 4 at the time. And I said, I don't know if I'm the right fit for this engagement, but let's go in for a couple hours. And so the current director of sales, who was actually going to step back and be a salesperson, he was a young director of sales. He said, you know what, I'm out of my depth. We've grown too much. I need some support. I'd rather keep selling. So he's there and the chief operating officer is there. And so we're kind of workshopping for about 2 or 3 hours. And I'm asking questions. What's your sales process? They tell me, they go to the whiteboard. They start to tell me that they get, say, 30 appointments scheduled a week from all their marketing activities. There's an 80% show rate. The average time is 30 minutes. They close this, they close that. Like they're going through the stats. They had a lot of it. And they're like, you know what? So Karl, we have all this stuff set, but one of the first things you're going to need to do is fire this one person. they are really negative, and they blow up the Slack channel and nobody really likes them. And I got to tell you, the first thing you need to do is let this person go. And I said, look, if we're going to do this, I want you to give me the first 30 to 60 days where I don't do anything. I don't change anything. We're not firing anybody. We're not jumping in. There's no fire drills. I'm going to spend that first 30 days understanding the offering, understanding the current sales process, understanding the team. And I'm a firm believer salespeople are eyes and ears and the brain, but they're the eyes and ears. They're out there making it happen. So I'm going to spend a lot of time with them. And most likely they're going to tell me what they would do to change things, what they would do to improve. And then I'm going to come to you and I'm going to tell you all these changes I want to make, but it's going to come from bottom up. It's going to come from the team. And if you're open to that, then I'm your guy. If you already know the answer to all these questions, I'm not your guy. They hired me. And to shorten one of the stories a little bit, I start working with this person that they wanted to fire. I get on a call and I say, hey, look, I'm not here to fire anybody. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm here to improve things. And I firmly believe if I asked you an open-ended question of what's your world like right now? Why are you still here? What do you wish it would be like? How would you improve? You'll start to tell me the answers. And I'll show you through my actions that you can trust me. I'm not going to throw you under the bus. I'm here to support you. We're going to see what happens. And over the next 2 or 3 weeks, meet with this individual 1 or 2 times each week, I start to learn she feels like people treat her really poorly. She doesn't want to meet a 30-minute meeting. She wants a 45-minute meeting because she really spends the time getting to know people. She looks underneath the surface, as a hint to my book, Iceberg Selling. She starts to see what's underneath the surface. And I look at the close rates, and her close rates were higher than everyone else. So she said, Karl, all I want you to do is instead of these damn 30-minute calls, give me an hour, give me 45 minutes. I'll take fewer calls, but guess what? I'll close more than anyone else, and it'll work out. And I also feel like she also gave me some other things like around price and this and that. So sure enough, true to my word, about 60 days in, I call up the CEO and the COO, and I said, hey, I need 30 days. I want you to give me an experiment for 30 days. You're not going to touch the team. You're not going to change anything. You're going to let me do what I think is best. And luckily they were on board. Sure enough, we did it. And at the end of those 30 days, we had increased the average sale price by about 30%. The whole team's close rate has gone up. And from that point on, this person that they wanted to fire became the best salesperson, like probably 80% of the time, the next 3 years, by a factor of 2, sometimes 3x the other salespeople. So that's an example where we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes we let emotion get in our history and our stories. But if we can really understand how to be present with someone and see what's underneath the surface and learn and learn and learn, oftentimes the answer appears. And then if we can support a movement toward that answer as a team, really great things happen, possibilities happen. And that's my mantra about when you come into an organization, whether you're up-leveling a person, the team, the leader, there's a great deal of understanding first because the answer is usually in front of us. We just start too revved up to see it clearly.
I'd love to explore this idea of iceberg selling, but perhaps for those who cannot easily distinguish between human-centric sales strategies and how they differ from traditional sales approaches, could you tell us the difference and why you believe human-centric approaches is more effective?
Yeah, I think one of the ways I would address that is if you watch a movie, Boiler Room, Glengarry Glen Ross, Wolf of Wall Street, anything where there's a shiny salesperson who's a master at convincing people of things and has a huge ego and is just like driving things all the time, that is not human-centric. That person is all about themselves. So while they might be a human, they are not thinking of that other person. They are not showing up with a spirit of service. They're not showing up with the idea of like understanding, meeting people where they are, and then bringing forth a solution, or even saying, I might not be the right fit, but this other person would be. The other part of that is when we're in a business of a lot of transactions. I don't care about whether your company's family owned or not. I'm buying on the cheapest price, period, because I think everything's a commodity. That's in there too, but I do believe there's still ways, even in that commodity business, to build a stronger relationship and more rapport. And even if you're in a place where it's all about price, you still might get more at bats than, say, your competitor. And we're after at bats. We're after at bats so that we can increase our batting average. I guess I'm a baseball guy, and create wins. To go deeper about human centric, to me, it's really about taking a minute and understanding that person's
Mm.
world. If I was your sales manager and I asked you to tell me the top 5 accounts you're about to close and to tell me about them, and you started to say, oh, there's a 30% chance and 80% chance, and this is why, and this is their buying criteria. And I said, tell me about that person's world and the team's world that you're dealing with. And if you can't tell me, then there's probably a hint there that there's an opportunity to learn more about them and what your solution would do for them individually and as a group. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking human centric. It's about taking the extra 5, 30 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, whatever it might be over a period of time, and truly showing up that you care and being authentic about learning about what's going on in that person's world so that you can solve more of a holistic solution than just what's on the surface.
Right. And could you define the term iceberg selling as you see it, and what inspired you to develop the framework?
Thank you for that. The whole idea with iceberg selling is I wanted to come up with something that we could all instantly imagine, right? And if you think about an iceberg, or if you think about the movie Titanic, when unfortunately that boat hit the Titanic, hit that iceberg, it's because they couldn't see what was underneath the surface. They only saw what was on top. And most icebergs, go ahead and Google it, only about 10% of the ice is above the water. So that's all we see as humans, 10%. Yet there's this 90% below the surface. It's actually the majority of that iceberg, right? So I believe that if we start as human beings and as salespeople thinking that everyone, including ourselves, the people we sell to, the teams we sell to, the problems that they have are icebergs, and at any one time we're only showing each other 10%, you start to go, how am I going to be successful solving problems if I only see 10% of the problem? And the answer is you're not. You're not going to be very successful. And so the whole idea with iceberg selling is, can we start to imagine everyone as an iceberg, every deal as an iceberg, and how do we learn to get more curious, give ourselves a little bit more time to look under the surface and see everything we can learn? Because as we start to learn a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, our ability to provide a solution increases, right? Because we actually see more of the landscape of what's going on in the business setting. So the whole idea with iceberg selling was, one, can I give the people I talk to, the workshops I run, the keynotes I do, the people I coach, an easy thing to go, oh, an iceberg, I can understand that. Cool, great, very quick, simple, easy. I'm a sales guy, I like simple and easy. And then the second was, I think if I could help people understand that there's ways to look below and see deeper and deeper and deeper, that they're going to be more successful in their job. And ultimately, I think salespeople want to help people. They want to be successful for themselves and for their companies and for their.
Brian, in your book, you outline 4 mindsets, I believe. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So the mindsets to me are like the table stakes. If you do any of these, you're going to up level your game. If you do all of them, you're going to see a lot of improvement. But when I tell you them, I think you're going to go, oh, that's common sense. And I hope that's what you say, actually. I hope you go, that is common sense. I could do that. Because sometimes all we need as human beings is a reminder, kind of a reorientation. So the first one is a lifetime value. What does that mean? It means, are you playing for this deal that's right in front of you? Or are you playing for all the deals that could come over time? Realtors know this. They sell somebody a house and then they continue to stay in front of them because they know they're eventually going to sell that house, or their parents are going to move to town, or their kids are going to, but they're seeing that this is a relationship for life. A lot of professional service industries, similar thing. But I would really challenge you. You're probably in a business, whether you sell cars or widgets or gravel or mulch or sand or computer services, SaaS, like you are potentially have an opportunity to have a lifetime value that's really high for your clients. And so oftentimes we run around trying to close something by the end of the quarter, end of the month. And a lot of times we need to do that. I get that. But it starts to put weird things in our head. We give out discounts, we get needy, we call people, we have weird conversations, and our close rate actually goes down, or our profitability per sale goes down because we're so anxious. So there's these two things, right? Can you reorientate your brain to thinking that I am building a lifetime value customer or client, and therefore that's where I'm going to put my energy. And yes, there's going to be some times where it doesn't close on the 31st of the month. But when I look at things over the next year, most likely I'm going to sell more than the person that's just rushing and trying to meet quota every month. So lifetime value is the first one. I'll give you the second one, then I'll take a pause.
Sure,
Does that work?
sure.
So the second one is being of service. And what does that mean? It definitely ties to lifetime value. And I'll give you a quick story. I have a client that's in the live event space. They produce events. So if you've ever been to an event with the guys with the black polos on, with the cameras, that's who we're talking about. So we're in a sales meeting, And he goes, I've met this meeting planner. Meeting planner is awesome. We could do business forever. Like he's thinking lifetime value. I'm like, awesome. So what's the problem? He goes, the problem is she sent me an RFP. I answered it. I sent it to her, and it's been 2 weeks and she won't return my call. Okay. So first of all, let's reorientate. Are you after answering this? Do you want to win this RFP, or do you want this meeting planner who could buy it from you for the next 20 years? Well, I want that. Okay. So let's take a pause, change the conversation. How do we change the conversation? What would be of value to support this meeting planner? I have no idea what you're talking about. I was like, how could you be of more service? I don't know. I call her all the time, asking her if she needs anything. I was like, what do you know about meeting planners? They're very social. They love inspiration. They love pictures. They like going to other events. They're always curious about the next venue. And he's like, yeah, that's all right. I was like, okay, do you have any pictures from another event you just recently did that you could send and just say, I think these are great. Is there any inspiration there? He's like, yeah, I could do that. And I was like, is there a new venue in town that you could go on a tour with her on and talk about the space and how we as a AV or a live event company could help be in it? He goes, yeah, I could do that. And I'm like, that's what we're talking about. What are the other things that create value for this person that you're getting to know, that shows that you care and you're actually trying to solve their whole iceberg, not just the tip of it. Like you're really trying to think holistically. And when that happened, his whole mannerism shifted. Same with the sales meeting. Everyone understood that they actually would rather live in that world of being of service than just chasing a deal. So those are like my first two.
Certainly. And I would love to hear the other two as well.
Okay. So the other two are combined together. One is an ownership mindset, and the other is a drivership mindset. So with ownership mindset, I want you to think about this. If you are a salesperson, and if you're a sales manager and owner, I want you to ask yourself, does your team think they have an ownership mindset? So here we go. An ownership mindset is you can architect your own story. You have the ability to create the success that you want. And do you believe it? If you're a salesperson, say, I do believe it, but my sales manager's in the way. I don't have my tools. I don't have this. Then I would invite you to move to a drivership mindset, which is getting into action, not being a passenger in the car. Because what you just described was helpless. I'm really good at what I do, but I don't have the tools I need, and I'm not doing anything about it. Okay. If I was your sales manager, I want you to come to me every single day and tell me what I can do to leverage you up. If I'm an owner of a company or a president of a company, I want my team to come to me and go, hey, guess what, Karl? If we did this instead of that, we'd sell more. If I did this instead of that, I'd close more, right? But if you're sitting there as a passenger just waiting, that CEO, that sales manager doesn't know, and you're also not being of service to yourself. So to me, ownership and drivership is, do you believe you have the ability to make your own life happen? And drivership is, will you jump into the driver's side of the car and drive it to where you need to be? Will you advocate for yourself? Will you make it happen? And it even applies to customers, right? We might have a customer that we totally believe our solution would change their life, but they're not calling us back. Okay, if you really believe it that much, then why are you sitting around telling me that they're not calling you back? Why aren't we figuring out how you can be a driver, take some ownership and go make it happen and bring an idea to them that blows their mind, shows that you care, and closes the deal? So ownership and drivership very much tied together, but the first one's definitely a mindset of, do I believe I own my own success? And the second one is, I'm going to actually turn that into action.
Certainly. Great points you make there. For perhaps a sales manager or even a salesperson who is in an organization where it's similar to the one that you described before, where they wanted to fire a particular individual because she wanted a longer time to speak with their clients, etc. If the organization is very locked into what a process should be or what the goals and metrics should be, what would you suggest to that sales manager or salesperson who sees the bigger picture but feels very constrained and beaten down every time they talk about change or a possibility?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a very difficult situation. I think that kind of gets to the mindset a little bit too. A lot of times we are so afraid as human beings that if I tell the truth or if I say something that might be uncomfortable, and we do this in sales all the time. Salespeople do this all the time. We are, as a salesperson, often so afraid of asking for the next appointment and getting our calendars out that we don't do it because we're afraid we're going to ruin all that rapport and they're not going to like me anymore. And that's actually the fifth best practice of iceberg selling, is make sure you have a clear next step and it's agreed upon. And no matter who you're selling to, that's being of service, because people are so darn busy that if we can't get them to actually have a real conversation to follow up and to move it forward, it'll start to spin out of control. And that's when we get ghosted or we start to chase people. That same concept is alive when you're talking to your internal customers. If you are the salesperson managing up, or you're the sales manager managing down, or across, however you want to call it in your organization, we have to realize that we already have some anxiety. It's very much like a sales call. Like, I'm afraid that we're going to meet, I'm going to say something that's going to jeopardize our relationship, and I'm going to lose the sale, i.e. my job, or I'm not going to get as many leads, or whatever, like whatever's in our head, or that head trash. So I think the first thing I would say, if you are the individual, is, do you have a sales manager that's really open to hearing you? And if you're like, I don't know, then I would test for that. I would, after my next sales meeting, be like, hey, Karl, could I get 15 minutes on your calendar? Nothing's wrong. I just wanted to share what's going on for me. And I have some ideas. I'm wondering if you'd be open to hearing them. And then when you get on that call with your sales manager, it's very much like a sales call. Hey, this is what I'd like to talk about. I'd really like to understand where you're coming from. I'd like to share where I'm coming from, see if there's an opportunity to maybe co-create a solution. And then if there is, let's talk about how we might be able to get it into action. Same if you're that sales manager. It's the same kind of muscle memory. It's about wanting to be present, creating a safe space for that person to share, knowing that you're not going to jump to any crazy conclusions or throw anyone under the bus. It's really about learning. And I think when you're authentic, whether you're communicating internally or authentic to a customer, they start to reflect that back. And I realize that might feel like, boy, I can't grab onto that, but just get your head around that first. And the second would be create space. What I mean by that is, if you are going to meet with somebody internally on your team, ask them for dedicated space. Don't do it at the end of the day. Do it in a neutral place. Have an agenda. Have done the work. Be ready to go. Maybe even send them something ahead of time. This is what I'd like to talk about. I'm very open to your feedback. But create that environment, much like you're creating like a first date or an anniversary or a birthday party for someone you care about. Like, how are you going to craft that experience, and then work that plan? That would be my back of the napkin
Okay,
advice.
that's very sound as well. Thank you for that. On the other side, how would you suggest that founders and CEOs can ensure alignment between their organizational values and their sales strategies?
Wow, I love that. First off, I'm a firm believer in core values. What I love about core values is they empower people to make decisions, which then means you don't need to micromanage them as much. So in my world, if I'm an executive, and let's assume we're really clear on our core values, what we stand for, I'm going to be talking about it a lot, and it's going to show up when I'm talking to my other leadership team members, or if I'm invited to a meeting. I'm going to be always leading with that, or at least making sure it's being recognized so people know that I believe it. And I'm also going to want to check that my leaders are walking the talk, and I'm going to recognize that. So if that's all happening, then a lot of what I would recommend you're doing with core values is you're hiring to those people. I want to say firing, but I don't really mean that. Like, you're evaluating the performance of the team against those core values, and you're making sure there's truly understanding across. I'll give you a quick
Lovely.
example. I was working with a senior partner of a professional services firm, and she had a younger salesperson. And I was coaching the younger salesperson and occasionally reporting back to the more senior partner. And this young guy, I'm on the phone with him, and he says, Karl, we screwed up last year. We quoted $5,000 for a project that should have been 15, and we closed it at 5. And now they want to do it again this year at 5. And I just realized we made a mistake. What do you think I should do? And I actually said, what do you think we should do? And he went through the normal stuff. We could have him sign a 3-year contract and tell him it's going to scale up. Like, he wouldn't have the conversation that we made a mistake. He was so afraid to tell that client, hey, we messed up. Should have been 15 grand. It's only 5. This year it's 15. He was just really worried. And I said, okay, what would our core values do? He goes, I'm not even sure I know our core values. Let's go to the website, click on this link, read our core values, and then get back with me and tell me, based on these core values, what would you do? And he did. He goes, we need to tell the senior partner, and I need to be transparent. I said, okay, great. Let's get on a call. So I schedule a call with the senior partner. Now, in my first book, Set Up to Win, I have a chapter called Tell the Mayor. So in this case, what it means is you got to tell that senior partner so there's no surprise. If you were the mayor of a little town and a big bombshell was about to be dropped in your city council meeting, and I was about to drop it on you, I better tell you beforehand, or you're gonna be in a bad place. So my shorthand is tell the mayor. So I call up the senior partner. I was like, hey, let me tell you what happened. I'm really impressed with this guy. He read the core values. He has a clear path forward, but he's scared to death to tell you, and he's scared to death to call the client. But I'd really like you to get on a call and hold the space that it's okay, and walk the talk of the core values and reinforce this. Can you do that? Absolutely. That would be great. So we get on a call. And sure enough, they processed through it. And when we went to next steps, the senior partner said, I really appreciate you doing this. We all made a mistake. I've known this client forever. I will be on the call and I will tell him if you want, or you can tell him, or we can both tell him, but I'm there to support you. And even if we lose the account, I'm going to pay you a commission on this one because you're doing the right thing. And so that leader was so in tune with how important core values were and how important it was to cultivate this person to make the right decision. They got on a call. Sure enough, they closed it for 15K. The client understood, no problem. But we often make these things in our head. So as a leader, I think what you want to always be doing is like, how can I demonstrate core values in the words in my emails and how I show up, how I manage people, so that your team below you starts to realize it is okay to do it that way. Because ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to empower people to become better at selling. In this particular instance, better at selling, representing our brand to our customers and to our clients.
Excellent. As we're thinking about that, I'm also wondering how you'd approach the integration of technology and automation in sales processes while maintaining this focus on human connection.
Yeah, that's a tricky one because I think oftentimes we want that shortcut, we want that efficiency to cover more ground. And I'm a yes and guy here. So for example, let's say you're doing outreach on LinkedIn and there's a gazillion tools out there that can automate sending invitations. We all get them every day,
Yeah.
right? And they don't hit. They are icky. They feel horrible. Well, what usually feels horrible is, for example, I'm not a plumber. I just want to tell you that before I tell you this right. I'm not a plumber. I got an invitation to connect with another consultant. And I just said yes, because sometimes I'm curious. And the next email was automated and said, thank you, Karl. We can get you 10 extra plumbing appointments each month for $199. I was like, wow, talking about not understanding your audience, right? I'm not a plumber. So, though I do fix things, but that's just a joke. But the point is, the automation isn't what's wrong. It's the execution of that automation. And I think my guess is this person created a big list. Somehow I was on it, didn't go through it, didn't screen it, sent a message. And then when it was accepted, just let the automation kick in and sent me a completely misaligned message. But I accepted the first invite. So potentially the lesson there is better understand your audience, understand what's important to them, automate that first experience potentially so that it's fast and efficient. But when someone does raise their hand, hello, I am a human. I am open that a human meets human. We don't just try to process it out. So for me, it's a yes and. There's a lot of places where we can lift efficiencies with technology and AI. I'm actually working on an AI project that sits within some of the CRMs to try to like data mine. And it's like a Moneyball idea. Like, how can we find the right person to sell to based on the criteria we have? So we're passing the ball to the receiver that most likely has the best odds of closing it. So there's a lot of ways to do it. But I actually think when it starts to get to be this piece of human to human, and I need to use my brain to look deeper, I need to look under that iceberg. That's when I think we need to take our foot off AI or foot off of automation and spend the extra time, because the yield's probably going to be worth it. You might be slower, but the yield's going to be worth it.
I'm curious, what advice would you have for sales leaders looking to balance the need for results-driven approaches with the importance of fostering genuine relationships?
The first thing I would say is you all, if you're listening right now, you might go, this guy's crazy, but you all have gold in your CRM right now. You have a ton of money trapped in there, period. You don't need more leads. You don't need the next cool tactic to bring more people in the funnel. Most likely, if you spent even a half a day and asked each of your salespeople to go through, who did we lose last year? Who did we lose the year before? What accounts could we sell something else to? What's changed in their world? Did they merge? Are they about to merge? Did they just add 20% headcount? Really learning about what's in front of us right now and breaking it into buckets. Most likely you're going to find there's a group of people or many groups of people that represent real opportunities. Then the next part would be, if you've never had each of your salespeople, walk you through what they do from the time they get a lead to the time they close and they're done, do it. Your mind's going to blow up because it's not going to be the same. And what you're going to realize is there's probably really great jewels from each of them. Not one person has the whole answer. They all have fractional answers. So we can start to take these fractional answers and put them together and get the team to have more buy-in about redefining a sales process, getting committed. They create it with you. Now you don't even have to train them. So the two things I would tell you is, one, you probably have, I don't know what the dollar amount's going to be, but you have a significant amount of revenue in your funnel. And if you can really start to get your team to talk about the journey they take someone through, and you can audit it and do it in a safe space, encourage, don't push them down, don't tell them they're wrong, just listen and ask them what they would do to make it better. You're going to walk out of there with core information that you can turn into a group exercise, and you ask them all to help redefine a sales process that they can follow 80% of this. And my guess is if you do that, you're going to get a significant amount of lift that gets you to the next horizon that you can't even see right now. That's what I would do if somebody were to bring me in. That's usually what I do.
I love what you're talking about. I'm hearing a real focus on empathy and understanding as being key to this idea of iceberg selling. I'm curious, though, are there perhaps an aspect or two around this idea of empathy and understanding that you find doesn't get much airtime? If so, what would they be?
Yeah, I'm going to think
Sure.
about that for a second. One thing that shows up to me sometimes is, as individual salespeople and sales managers and leaders, we are impatient. We are typically not a patient group of people. That's why we are in sales. That's why we bet on ourselves. That's why we start companies. Like, we are about change and moving and making things happen. And so I think sometimes the idea of spending more time with a customer, I could hear someone going, well, are they qualified yet? Do they have the budget? Do they have the authority? Do they have the need? And you're like, man, they're on the lot. They're talking to us. Instead of forcing it into the construct that we have to believe it in, let's try something different. Let's meet them where they are and have a conversation. Let's do this for 2 weeks or a month and see what happens. But if what's working right now isn't going to get you to where you want to be, then I would invite you to think about trying something different that might get you to where you want to be. And so under that kind of thinking, yeah, it's hard. It's hard sometimes to be like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna pause, and I'm gonna be more friendly, and I'm gonna be more open. And that's what people think iceberg selling is about. But it's not. It's about showing up in a way where you're curious, not forcing things, just like the story I told earlier. Instead of making it a 30-minute appointment because it's so darn efficient, I'm gonna make it 45 minutes because that gives this person an extra 15 minutes to begin the conversation, being like, hey, if I was able to solve your problem, what would that do for your life? I tell you why I do this, why I work here, and I start to share and you start to share. We have a much richer, higher impact conversation because we took the extra time. So a lot of times I think we do hold on to the bat too much. We feel like we have to drive and numbers and the books and the things we see on TV and streaming. But at the end of the day, if you want to try to change something, start on the human side of things. Start changing how you show up and get to know your customers and possible customers. And you want to put some metrics to it? Cool. Have one guy do it one way, the other guy do it the other. At the end of the 30 days, 60 days, see where they are. In my world and in all the clients I work with, I know which one wins. It's the one where we spend more time seeking to understand, sharing ideas, co-creating solutions so that people feel really good about the choices they make. And then we don't have to say anything like, hey, what do I need to do to get you to buy it today? The clients actually tell us, I'm ready to go. What's next?
If you were listening to this episode, what would you say would be your top takeaway?
Spend a little extra time. I think if I'm listening, I would say, wow, Carl's told me a couple times that if I just slow down, get a little bit more present, if I go through those mindsets, right? Oh, yeah, lifetime value. I knew that. I'm not going to rush my next sale. I'm not going to try to push them. Being of service. Yeah, I care about people. Yeah, if I slow down and learn more about somebody, I could maybe help them out a little bit more. And wouldn't that be cool? And okay, yeah, there's things I could own and change. Okay, so I think the common theme here is self-reflection, looking inward and looking outward at your sales process, inward how you're showing up, what's your role within it, and at least getting curious about what could you change? What could you change to learn a little bit more? What could you change to give yourself more space? What could you do to not rush sales? And that alone may very well change your reality.
And Carl, if listeners are curious, want to find out more or connect with you, where would you recommend they head to?
Yeah, thank you. Two things. We up-level sales organizations, up-level sales leaders, and we up-level individual salespeople. The book Iceberg Selling is easy to remember because you just type in icebergselling.com and you're going to find it. And you can get to my corporate website from there, which is called improvingsalesperformance.com. So either improving sales performance or icebergselling.com, and you can certainly find me if you put those words in into LinkedIn, and Karl with a K, Karl Becker. Always happy to accept invites and get into conversations, even just answer questions. So that's what I would invite you to check it out.
Brilliant. And I'm assuming Iceberg Selling, etc., is available on Amazon and other major book retailers. Yeah.
It is Amazon, Audible. You can track it down. It's a fun, fast
Okay.
read too. It's about 111 pages. It's going to take you an hour and a half to two, and you're going to feel good. And you can listen to it in chunks and get fun takeaways. It's a really fun read if you're a salesperson. It's written by a salesperson for salespeople.
Brilliant. We'll include links to that in the show notes. Karl, thank you so much for doing this. It's been brilliant.
God, this has been so great. Thank
No
you.
worries.